Oh. Alright. You won't get embered. Oh, hello, and welcome back to Pixorama, where today I'm feeling a little nostalgic. Yes, that's right. Every now and then a waft of nostalgic air buffets the back of our head and reminds us of our golden childhood gaming days. And I thought I would act on that impulse today and create a piece of retro pixel art of the NES, also more commonly known as the Nintendo. So let's dive into Pixel Edit and see how nostalgia can take us into worlds previously known and not yet forgotten.
Our journey begins in Pixel Edit, a wondrous land of pixely magic, where we'll create a canvas of 128 by 128 pixels. And for this little project, I've got a couple of reference images that I've got on the back burner, ready to pop up at any point to make sure that I'm on track. Now, the first thing that we're going to do in this process is create a color palette, because I want to be true to the nature of the device we are creating. So I'll show you a little trick here in Photoshop. If you open up an image and head to the Export Manager, but the legacy version, not the new one, you'll find some options up here in the corner. You want to switch it to GIF, or GIF, though as it stands for Graphics Interchange Format, I believe GIF is the right term, but you know, it's up for debate. In any case, the GIF format restricts the colors used in your document and also crunches the hell out of them so that they're ready for web use and they're nice and small. You can see here that by default it uses a model called Perceptual to guess the colors in your image and then assigns it 128 colors. You can see them below in that big palette. But we don't want that many colors in our pixel art. We ideally want between 12 and maybe 16 colors. So I'm going to drop that number right down to 12. It's going to readjust the image and select the colors that it thinks are most appropriate. Let's get rid of the lossy here, make it 0, otherwise our image will look like garbage. And now we can check that the model has guessed the correct colors that we need. We can do this by heading to the original image, selecting the eyedropper, and then choosing a few colors. And you can see that when I'm choosing those colors, it starts highlighting ones that I've chosen or the closest possible colors in the palette. So in this case, I would like to have 2 shades of red to choose from, and it's only selected 1. So I'm going to increase the palette to 12. I'm going to actually lock the 2 colors in that I want, the darker red and the lighter red. And then if I reduce the palette colors again, you'll see that it retains the colors that I've locked. So this is a great method for getting the right colors in your palette. And from there, the next step is just to export your image. Make sure that you export it as a GIF, because then it will retain the colors that we've created. Back in Pixel Edit, we'll now use that image we've just created to define our palette. So head up to the menu here, go to Color and Import from Image, and now select the GIF that we've just exported from Photoshop. This will load all those colors into the palette up the top here, and it just takes a wee bit of rejiggering about to get them into the positions that you would like. Perhaps they're not like that by default, it's up to you. Once you've organized the colors in the palette to your liking, it's time to start creating. So I'm going to make a new layer here and start banging out the rough shape of this NES console using our lovely new palette. Now, you may have noticed that I marked this tutorial as easy, and that's because when creating electronic devices, we have the benefit of recreating objects that were designed usually in mathematical precision, and which are usually comprised of simple geometric shapes. Which is absolutely the case here with this NES console and its controllers and the little game that we're going to make. We are basically just creating a bunch of rectangles. Which I am aware is not the most romantic way to describe this groundbreaking piece of tech, designed by Uemura Masayuki, by the way. This console was originally released in 1983 in Japan, and it was called the Famicom. At that point in time, it was a very impressive piece of tech, and it remains a very impressive piece of tech today, in hindsight, of course. But it wasn't until 1986, 3 years later, that it was actually released in North America and rebranded to, of course, Nintendo, the console we all know and love. Well, that just about does it for this episode of Old Tech Facts. Until next time, sayonara. This program was brought to you by Carpocketon Corporation. Yes, TV certainly has come a long way since the 80s.
I'm now going to start tweaking this little NES console to make it a little more accurate dimension-wise. You can see I've also added power and reset buttons here. But I think the machine's looking a little too square, so I'm going to buff it out a little bit, stretch it here and pull it there, and get it looking a little more rectangular. Now it's time for some more little details, like the controller sockets. And you can see that for some of these things I'm literally deciding on just doing 1 or 2 pixels to give the impression that there's something there. Because at this resolution you simply don't have the option of going into detail too much. So you've got to get away with what you can, and, sometimes less is more, as the maxim goes. Let's whip up some controllers here, and the controllers for the original NES were strangely hard. I'm amazed that they didn't actually hurt people's hands, because they were kind of this sharp rectangular shape, but we seem to have had absolutely no problem holding them for hours on end. It's at this point while drawing the D-pad that I run into a small problem, because I don't seem to have enough shades of grey or black to differentiate that D-pad. It's actually black on the original controller. But there you can see it because they've given it this beautiful white outline, and it catches light and stuff, but we don't have too much wiggle room to play around with details here. So basically I just settled on making them grey. I know, sacrilege. I'm going to tilt one of these controllers and shift it around to make this little scene look a little more interesting and give it a bit of randomization. And now it's time to move on to our favorite part of this console, which is, of course, the game cartridge. Well, you know what? I think every part of it is my favorite part of the console, but the game cartridges were obviously quite a major part of the experience. This one, I'm going to start by giving it a bit of rilling down the side, because they all had this odd sort of texture. I think it was to give people grip so that you could pull it out of the machine. I'm not entirely sure. Or it was just to make it look cool in that 80s tech retro kind of way. Like the Atari before it and the little handheld consoles and various other consoles after it, Nintendo had very strict style guide rules in place for game manufacturers when creating their games and labeling them. So the NES cartridges all had a very iconic look. In this case, as you may have noticed, I'm just going to make a game up, because I don't have that many colors in my palette, and also I don't really have the patience to create a real game cartridge artwork right now. So let's call it Pyramid Puzzle Bonanza. And like so many children who woke up on various Christmas mornings and birthdays to find that their parents had bought them some weird-ass game that they'd never heard of, you will be happy with this, and you will appreciate it. Alright, we're going to move on to a little bit of detailing now, and as you can see, I'm going to add some specular highlights to our console. By using slightly lighter shades of grey, I'm just going to give the impression that there is a bit of light falling on this machine, and it also serves to give it a little bit of texture. So now you can see that they're made of some material that's not altogether smooth. It's got a wee bit of a bumpiness going. I will add a little bit of specular highlighting to the game cartridge itself, and fix this stuff up a little bit, add a couple of shadows, and now it's time to soften out some of these edges with what we in the biz call anti-aliasing, which basically involves choosing a similar lighter or slightly darker color than the area you're working on, and just making sure that you hit some of those corners and edges to take the sharpness off. So you can see I'm doing that on the controller, on some of the controller details on the inside and outside of the shape. It's especially handy when you have objects that are tilted in pixel art, because pixel art tends to love straight objects and straight lines. So you can see with the controller on the far left, I have put it on a bit of an angle now, and that's made the edges all jaggy. So the best way to soften that up is to use some anti-aliasing and just put some pixels on the corners where the jaggies are worst and try and give it a bit of a softer look. I'm going to tilt the game cartridge as well, because I am tiring of it sitting there looking so plain and boring. So it's now tilted as well, and you can see that I'm going to go around the edges and do the same little technique, softening up some of those jaggies with a couple of little helper pixels. Now, some people anti-alias the heck out of their little pixel art pieces, and it's an effect that can look really cool. I tend to be more sparing with it, because I actually like the sharpness that raw pixel art tends to bring. But, it depends on what you're working on and if you like the look or not, really.
I trust you'll be very judicious in your future use of this superpower.
Very good, son. Judiciousness is a fine quality for a leader to have, and more important...
I think you'll find, Father, that I have many fine qualities. Now, send the servants in with the wine.
Wine? Now hold on just 1 second. If you think I'm going to...
You heard, and you always said I should act like the prince I am, so go on, get me some wine immediately.
No, I won't do it. You're a minor, for goodness sake. I beg your pardon. Oh, this is really immature. Oh, blast it all. Do what you want.
Okay, thanks, bye.
Yes. It's time to whip up a little background for this image. And initially I had thought about doing just a plain, boring, vanilla border. You can see that I already started that here. And then, very quickly, I changed my mind and decided,
You know what? No, I don't want to do just a plain, boring border. You know, everybody's got them. I want to do a table. And this table's gonna be a strange color, though, sure. But it's gonna look pretty cool, because it's gonna be orange.
that was my thought process as I began this little segment of our project. And that required moving some things around, but I think it was worth it in the end. The other thing that I did was to add some shadowing to this. But here's the thing. You know how in some of my other videos, I always harp on about keeping track of your light source? Because it's really important, you know, keeping track of your light source tells you where the light's coming from, where the specular highlights are going to be, and where the shadows are going to be as well. Perhaps you've noticed that I've done a big Jimzip boo-boo in this video. And I will admit, it took me actually quite a while to realize I'd done it. But as you can see here, the light seems to be coming from the left side of the screen, and the shadows seem to be going towards it. Which is, in my estimation, a physical impossibility. And that is a big no-no. So I'm going to flip all the shadows around because I feel like that's the quickest fix here. And within a few moments, you'll notice that things start to look a wee bit more harmonious. You may also have noticed, if you're particularly eagle-eyed, that our palette has gone from 8 colors to 12. Well, you know, it happens. I needed the extra colors for some shading and shadows and all that sort of stuff. And, you know, I'm not really on a budget here, so I didn't mind adding a couple more. I personally feel it made the image look, well, that much better. Which brings us at last to the part I love most, the great reveal. And here she is in all her 8-bit glory, a little NES console sitting on a lovely orange table. I want to play that game.
Ah, sweet, sweet nostalgia. It meets us when we least expect it, and also imparts a sweet, zesty waft of joy. I hope this episode brought you some sort of entertainment or perhaps enlightenment. If you enjoyed it, please smash the like button to show me some love, or subscribe to see more episodes like this. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Jimzip. Until next time, bye!